Welcome to the Unfinished podcast. Truth be told, we've never really learned how to deal with our unfinished business. In a society that's taught us to be put together, what do we do when our world falls apart? Most importantly, why does our world fall apart? See, right now we're living through the most significant transformation humanity has ever known. Knowing how to pick up our pens and write a renewed story has never been a more important conversation. So welcome to the podcast that interviews heroes that at some point had to start again and rise to glory.
Cole Gibson.
One of Australia's top 100 most influential women.
Love is always there.
The more love you give, the more you get it back.
We're all connected.
And that's unification. Trent, welcome to the Unfinished podcast. You know, what I loved about what you just shared was something that I haven't yet heard a guest say, which is the past really is just, it is finished, and we need to see it as something that's finished, and we need to look at what's unfinished as our limitless potential in the future. I love that frame, and I think that that's such a beautiful place to begin our conversation. The first curiosity I have, because it takes a great deal of strength, I think, you know, mental grit and resilience to get to a place in your life where you really understand that the past is the past. And my curiosity is, has it always been like that for you? Or was there a time in your life where you were more so trapped by demons from your past?
Definitely. I think it's something that's learnt over time. I think the habitual mind in us is always taught about the bad things that we've done. I don't know about everybody, but for me, you know, bad things you've done in the past and things that you should regret and this and that. So I think that you're used to thinking in a way that, you know, you wish you could change these things, you wish you could change those things, until, for me anyway, until my mind matured a bit more and I've come to realise that everything that happened back then, good, bad, ugly, has shaped and moulded me into the person that I am today, you know. And I think that it's, like I said, it's all about going at life with whatever mindset is going to grow you. And I think if you focus on the bad and it means bad in the present, then you're never going to let it go. And I think it's just coming to terms with being content with what is, what has been is, and what you can do moving forward, knowing that you've done these things. You know, it's about what you learn. So yeah, I think it was something that I learned. I think back, you know, especially when you're younger and that you hold on to things and you wish you could have done that, you wish you could have done this. But I think now, being where I am, definitely, I definitely have a different view on it.
And do you feel like you're at a place where you truly have found total peace when you look back at your life?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, I was always happy. I was always, you know, thought I was happy, I guess, deep down. But I think, you know, after a long time, and I guess working on my mind first and foremost, to try and look at the world in a different way that I used to be looking at it, because I mean, that's all it is. All it is, all peace is, all happiness is a state of mind. And the state of mind we can create at any moment in time. And I know that we all know that, but it's like, once you understand that, like the power of that, you're like, wow. And it's a practice that I get frustrated, I get angry, I get this and that, but I can pull myself back and realize that it's just me attaching meanings to thoughts, you know? So I think it's something that can go as quick as it comes as well. It's something that I continually have to practice. So I would say, yeah, at the moment, I am exactly where I need to be on this earth.
Clarity is fleeting. I've always felt very frustrated by that expression. And, you know, one of the things that Em and I, my last guest, were talking about was the moments where we first recognize the default voice in our mind had changed. That state of mind had shifted when we did something that, you know, historically we would have beaten ourselves up for and not been able to kind of forgive. We would reached a point in our journeys where it, like, that shifted, that default voice that triggered had shifted. And I want that for everyone so much. You know, a big part of doing this is to help people realize, you know, there's always going to be things that we could lament on that feel unfinished, but there's always this, you know, powerful future that we get presented with, and this powerful present moment that we get presented with, that's limitless. And so I think what you're sharing is really powerful. Just a state of mind is something that we need to train. So, where did that begin for you?
I guess it began for me, at when it all started when I really was at my rock bottom. I think I was, unfortunately for some people, it takes a drastic life event to occur before you have a realization. Unfortunately for some people, it's too late. I was lucky enough that it wasn't too late. And basically sitting down on myself, losing everything, being at my lowest point, couldn't get any lower, and just having a conversation with myself about, first of all, how did this happen? Trying to blame people, trying to, push all my bad feelings onto everyone else, and using substances that I abused and used my stress as an excuse. And then just taking extreme ownership of the situation that I was in. And it was a shit situation, but I created that shit situation. And realizing that and taking ownership of that was my very first point, because you can never change if you don't admit to yourself that you are where you are because of you and nobody else, right? That was for me. So taking ownership of where I was, and it wasn't a good place. I didn't want to be there. But now when I go back, it was exactly where I wanted to fucking be, because I didn't have a direction of where I wanted to be in the first place. So if I wanted to hop in a car and go somewhere, I put into Google Maps my destination. Gives me a nice little line how to get there. In life, if you don't have a destination, right, that destination can change all the time, but it's got to have a direction. You're never going to know. You're never going to end up where you want to be. So when you hop out 10 years, 12 years, 20 years time, and you go, I didn't want to fucking be here. It's exactly where you wanted to be because you didn't know where you wanted to go in the first place. So I guess having a clear direction of where I wanted to go, so writing some things down of what I wanted to achieve in my life, first of all. And it was simple as, we talked about happiness and peacefulness and contentment. I just want to be happy. Like, that's a saying. It's like, I just want to do a lot of things. What does that look like? What does happiness for you mean? What does happiness for me mean? And everyone will find happiness to them means different things. And just started to write that down. And at that time, my partner had left and everything. And my happiness, I just wanted to be in a house with my family, be doing good by myself, stay off drugs and alcohol, be fit, et cetera, et cetera. That was like my little kind of map of it. So I could just write it down and have something there to look at, I guess. So
take us into, I feel like there's a universe of story in
so I guess
I want to know that this moment that you found yourself in, like you shared it almost frivolously, like you had lost everything. It's a pretty massive statement.
Rock bottom, I was the heaviest I've ever been, 25 kilos overweight. And I remember just getting a glimpse of myself in the shower. My missus had left from my own poor decisions. I forced her to leave, basically. And I remember just looking at myself in the mirror, crying in a mess and just saying, like, is this it, mate? Is this it? And that was probably the darkest moment I've ever had in my life, to the point where it was the only point in time where I thought maybe the solution to my problems was me not being here anymore, right? And to think about that now, I can take myself back there. It's not a good place to go, but to think that I actually thought that. I didn't make a conscious decision to do anything, but I thought I'd exhausted every other avenue and maybe that was my best or most feasible option. And then realizing, well, if I got myself into this, I can get myself out of it. And that's truly why I always say, no matter how shit everything gets, and I know how cliche it is, but coming from someone that may not be here talking to you right now, if I didn't first take ownership and then realize while I'm still breathing, it might take a few years, it might take a couple of decades, but there's always room for a comeback, And it was so liberating because I realized that I had the power to change this all around. So after doing all of my thinking and speaking to myself and breaking it all down, what must follow the idea is massive action, massive and immediate action. towards where you want to go, you know. And then I started my journey forward.
Well, this moment, you know, these moments are so relatable, I think, for so many people. This moment that you were in the bathroom, you said that you had forced your partner to leave. I think like there's some valuable wisdom in your reflections there too. Like how many of us push the people we love away when actually what we need most is love. So I'd love to dive into that a little bit. But this moment where you looked at yourself in the mirror, like, you know, I have had my own versions of this, going through an eating disorder, and one of my most defining, life-changing moments was being in this really intense cycle of binging and purging, and just feeling like I was completely, like my soul was going to leave my body. This literally was the darkest, you know, moment that I realized if I don't change, I'm not going to survive this.
100%.
I'm not in control of this anymore. And you know, this is something I'm really fascinated by, is up until often we reach that point where we cannot go lower. We actually have this false sense of being in control of our circumstances. And it's through accepting and taking responsibility and ultimately like surrendering to what the truth is, which can be so hard to face because there's so much there of shame and, you know, difficult feelings that we don't want to confront. When you were in that moment, like take us into that moment, what was the truth about what you were feeling? Because I know, as someone that relates to what you're saying, it's not just a matter of, yep, okay, well, I'm going to change my life.
No,
everything's good now.
It's not. It's, look, basically, you know, I realized I had to stop self-hating on myself. The great thing you just brought up was about love, you know, and to me, it's all about self-love. You know, it can't, you know, you got to stop self-hating on yourself. And the reason why I was self-hating on myself is because I was treating myself in that manner. You know, it was the way that I was treating myself. It was the way I was treating my mind. So I'm self-hating on myself when I need to learn how to love myself again, you know, and not in a vain way or not anything like that. You've got to learn how to love yourself again, you know, and treat yourself good. And the only way that you can move forward is to start loving yourself again and stop self-hating yourself and stop putting yourself down. All these, it's a very fine line between, I think, where people say, oh, don't say that about yourself, don't put yourself down, and the fucking truth. Because there's some truth in that, right? For me anyway. There was some truth.
You have to face the reality. You've got to face the reality. Like lying to yourself is not the way.
Correct. So I think, you know, there is a fine line between like self-hating on yourself and also telling yourself the truth about where you are. But I realized I'd done a mixture of both. And the reason why I was doing that is the way that I was treating myself, the way I was treating my body, the way I was treating my mind, the things I was consuming on TV, the things I was consuming on social media. All of this is a momentum effect. You know, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, the fat get fatter, the skinny get skinnier. It's because of the momentum that we create. And we create that momentum every day. And that's why habits are so hard to create and bad habits are so hard to break, because you've created this immense momentum that you need to stop that momentum in its tracks and then try and push it back in the direction that you want it. So I think that's what takes time. And I think that's what a lot of people can relate to, is where do I start? It's like climbing Mount Everest, you know, and we all know the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the very first step, right? But then you get 2, 3, 4, 5 steps into it, and you're like, fuck, I'm not getting anywhere with this. I'm going to go back, because the old bad habits for me still outweighed the very minuscule good ones. So I knew it was going to take time. So it's just being content with the process and realizing that any place of fulfillment or any place of your full potential is an infinite one. It will never end. You can never get there, but you can be content with the process of attaining as close to that as you can in this life anyway.
Yeah, I love that. And so what did that look like? What did the beginning
beginning look like for me? How did I do it? You're saying how did the beginning start on this journey back? after
Yeah,
that.
I really, I want people to understand the reality, because I think, we live in this society where so many of us don't even realize how used to seeing the finished product we are.
Yeah.
And it creates, I think, very unrealistic, with a lot of people I've facilitated over the years. So much of their challenges and their pains can only be overcome through consistency.
Definitely.
And I think that's a message a lot of people don't fully understand, because of the exposure that we have daily to what's finished.
Very polished, very well-rounded, finished product of everything. And I get that a lot from where I am now, and it's hard for people to relate, but you just like being as open as you can and showing the process from start to finish, I think helps everybody understand that we all are the same and we can all do great things. My great things might not be the same as the great things you want to do, and that's okay. It's whatever is great for you, and whatever gets that, I call it the invisible switch in here. Whatever switches that on for you is different for me, but when you find that, go towards that. So for me, basically having all these thoughts swirling around my head, knowing I wanted to do better, knowing I was ready to commit to want to do better, but not knowing. And I liken it to, and I speak about this, to wanting to get fit and go to the gym and work out and not knowing how to do it. So I go to the gym, there's all these weights in the room, I don't know how to do it. So what do? I get a personal trainer. Hey man, this is what you got to do. These are the techniques that you got to do. This is how you should do this, right? Well done, mate. Good stuff. You're trying to do better for yourself. But we don't do that for the most important thing in between our ears, our minds. So I've got all these thoughts. What do? I go see a psychologist. He's going to be like the gym trainer for my mind, but more important, because that's the captain of this whole ship. So I booked in to see a clinical psychologist. I believe you might know him. He's from the Gold Coast. His name's Cliff Batley. I went and caught up with Cliff, and basically I went there a couple of times in the past, right? He's really good with drugs and alcohol. And the way that, and this is why I talk about going at life with the right mindset. When I went to him the first couple of times, I couldn't receive his message, because my mindset was, I have a problem. The habitual human wants to do as little as possible and get the most optimum outcome, right? So I went to him and I'm like, hey mate, I heard you're good. Fix me. Do you think that worked? No, it didn't. Went back again. Hey, mate, you're good. Fix me. It wasn't until I went in there with the mindset that I was going to fix me. Cliff was there to basically show me where the key was to the toolbox inside here that is in me, you, and everyone else, right? Which is our full potential, right? So when I went in there with that mindset, I was ready to receive his information, if that makes sense. So I made a pledge to stay drug and alcohol free while I went and seen Cliff, and he helped me to find my true happiness. He helped me to start the process of being the best human that I could be, and I'm forever grateful to him for doing that for me. So that's how it started, and that's how we kick things off in that direction. So that was kind of, let's call it day 2. After day 1 was realization. Day 2 is the massive action. Let's do something about it. If you don't know what's going on in your head, or you don't know what to do, go and see someone about it. It might take you 5, 6, 7, 8 times till you find that person. And when you find that person that clicks, it's going to do nothing but good things for you. Believe me. And especially in this climate, like we're so geared towards how miserable things are at the moment. It takes a very strong mind, and even myself, to pull myself back, and because the pressures of all this that's happening, and you're tricked into thinking everything's really bad, but it's not. I'm sure some bad things or some things are happening to people just like they're happening to everyone else, and no one has it better or worse than anyone. It's just the way that we perceive things, I think. So yeah, that's where it kind of started, mate. With the whole action part of the journey.
I think that message is so valuable, when you have that moment of inspiration or realization, is maybe a better word, where you really are present to what needs to change. Don't hesitate, So I think what happens so often is the mind can become so good at and justifying. Like, I know there were so many moments where I would have, moments of kind of epiphany or realization, but the next day I'd be like, oh, it's not actually that bad. I don't need to change. I don't. But when you make that commitment, you're actually saying to your mind, you're saying to life, I'm going to take the steps, and I'm going to commit to the steps, and I'm going to show up even when I don't feel like showing up. And one thing I'm curious about, your commitment when you started working with Cliff to stay drug and alcohol free. What were the initial moments where you found that the hardest, and what were those triggers, and how did you get through that?
I think the hardest thing is what you just touched on then. It's the showing up and the consistency, showing up even when you don't want to, and trying to give myself the best fighting chance at being able to do that when I wasn't mentally strong enough to do it. And that's where I think the accountability aspect comes in to play, right? Because if you don't or keep yourself accountable, or know you don't have someone there to keep you accountable, it's very easy to stay off track. I can always lie to people. I got to solve this, I got to solve that, but if you start something and make either somebody or something that you're accountable to, it's like some form of like a little secret weapon that gives you that extra, I got to do it, or someone's there asking you, hey mate, you're doing it. So I think it's about confiding in someone or something to keep you accountable. My thing started off, I started working out, so I started putting things up every day. I wanted to start a habit of showing that this is what I'm going to do every day and keep myself accountable to it. I still do it to this day. 3 years, 8 months, and 17 days later, I've tracked every day that I've stayed off drugs and alcohol, and I just kept myself accountable to Cliff first and foremost, because I kept seeing him every week. Went to the time where I had to see him twice a week and then twice a fortnight, and it, tapered off a little bit, but just kept that accountability on and kept myself honest to myself and no one else, because I realized that was all good. But at the end of the day, I had to grow this character to a point where I could keep myself accountable, and that I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I knew I was a fraud, because the only fraud that I am is to myself, really. We could pretend all this shit. I could shut the computer and I'm a fraud to myself. And it took a while to get to that point. And that's something that's built every day, like you said, with consistency, where it becomes how you do anything is how you do everything, right? And that just starts with, I think, finding someone to keep you accountable, or finding something to keep you accountable whilst you don't have the strength and character to do that for yourself.
Yes, I love this message. Thank you for sharing. One of the things that I think gets so misconstrued on many journeys of development is the idea that we can simply just tell ourselves, I am lovable, I am proud of myself, but when that's not backed up with this consistency, when we're not meeting those edges of life, and what challenges us, and actually making choices that define our character in a way that help us, meet ourselves in a new way. I think that's the most fundamental thing, meeting ourselves in a way that gives us that sense of, wow, I really am proud of myself. I'm strong. We allow our actions to actually inform that sense of character within us. That is true transformation, true change. And I think it's often really lost. And a lot of us don't even realize that we stay in our comfort zones to such a degree that it becomes so easy to kind of mollycoddle ourselves and tell ourselves that we're great, and and not actually put ourselves in situations that trigger insecurity, that trigger us to feel inadequate, and actually like grow ourselves into a new phase of expansion.
100%. I think it's because, again, us being creatures of habit, I feel that we've always had a negative connotation to the word failure, but really when you break it down, if you're not failing at things, you're not even really fucking trying, right? Because you're being comfortable. You know where you can go, and you want to just keep hitting that because you want the praise. You want this, you want that. If you're not consciously aware of it, it's so unconscious that it's so repetitive in the human nature that we just want this praise. We want to be able to keep, walking over our goals, right? Because we're hitting them. We want to be comfortable because the human brain believes that by keeping us comfortable, it's keeping us safe. This is where I'm safe. It's like the brain giving you a nice little warm hug, right? And that's cool. And I get it. The brain's there to keep you safe, but it's never going to grow and expand if it's not put in uncomfortable situations. Every single chance you get, you got to put friction on the brain. You got to put resistance on the brain in all forms, physical, mental, in order for it to grow at all. Because the only way that you can get to somewhere that you haven't been is to do things that you haven't done in order to get there, And it sucks because I want to sit on the couch too, and I don't want to wake up at 4 a.m. and I don't want to do this shit every single day. I still don't want to do it all these years later, but I know it has to get done if I want a different outcome, I
fucking love that, Trent. I'm such a big believer in finding that sense of urgency, and that sense of urgency might not make sense to anyone outside of you, like why you are so committed. And I've experienced judgment for that, like being called obsessive and like sort of it's been perceived in these ways. But that if I don't put the things I know develop my character and give me an opportunity to feel proud of myself and walk through the world with confidence, if I'm not prioritizing that, my question is, what am I prioritizing?
Exactly. You're doing injustice to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And it matters, that sense of urgency that I think so many people try to medicate in various ways. We all feel it. Like I watch, when I'm in London and I'm watching people on the tube, and you sort of you can see in their faces and how they are in peak hour, like there's something in their soul that they're not listening to, but they're not being urgent about it. They're just allowing the days to kind of, go. And I love
happen to them.
Happen to them, exactly. And there's always some kind of pipe dream of when that might change, and we're waiting for the circumstance to change in order for us to change. But what's so crazy to me is over the past couple of years, humanity's been given such a profound opportunity to change, to look at themselves. And so many people I heard say, I just want the world to stop. I want time. I want, and all that people now say and what the media promote is we got to get back to normal. We've got to get back to normal. And if that's not if that's not a testament to the patterns, that we can become stuck within as a human being, the whole world can literally go into a pandemic lockdown, and that still is not enough circumstantial change for you to change your inner world. What is it going to take?
Yeah, I agree. And it's like, exactly, everyone, we don't have enough time. We don't have enough time. And then we've been given this abundance of time, and still a vast majority is still thinking the same. It goes to show how strong that mindset of comfortability has been built over these years, and exactly what you said. It's like, I'll do it later, I'll do it later, I'll do it later. And we all know what later turns into. It turns into fucking never. You're never going to do it, And I think I don't know. I'm speaking for myself. So I think until you can sit down and have that conversation with yourself, and what I mean by it is just sit down wherever you can to get a moment to think about what it is that you really want. And I think a lot of people, I know I was really scared of doing that because I was afraid of what I was going to hear. I was going to hear the truth. I might not have wanted to be going on the tube in London in a fucking suit, some big company that tells me when I got to eat fucking lunch for. Maybe I'm going to hear that. And maybe, and deep down, I know I'm going to hear that, and I think it's not realizing the urgency of we never know how much time we've got here. That's all we have is an allotment of time. I know that we've created this, we call it time, right? We're just here in the moment, but only have an allotment of presence. And I think every minute we're not striving towards being a better us. You don't have to be breaking land speed records every day. You just got to be doing something that's positive for you, for your being, I think that it's just spiritual suicide if you're not trying to do that, you know. And then we all hear about the top 10 things that cancer patients or people on their last legs write down and what they've regretted and stuff, but we don't want to act on that. And I agree with you. I always want to get to the bottom of what it is in society that doesn't allow us to change the narrative of what we should be doing in life. And I think it might be the way that we're structured, that we should be doing these things. So we feel that we should be doing these things. And we're not really told to be free thinkers. And we're not really told to go and experiment and go and try new things a lot, right, from the structured school educational environment that we're in. So I think it's going to take decades and decades and decades before we can get to some sort of place where, you know, we do commonly think in a different way that we are now. I think it's just been so drummed into our head over so many generations that, you know, I think things like this and things like social media, although we put a lot of negative connotations on that as well, is probably one of the most positive sources of communication that we have if we use it in that way, you know, because it allows us to create and spread messages like this to drum up sparks and flames inside anyone else that hears it to do their own thing, you know. So I think that's where it kind of starts as well.
Yeah, I want to talk about this. Why? Why? Because I want people to be able to walk away from this episode really understanding. I don't know, for me, success at the end of this episode would be for you, dear listeners, to understand that that choice to begin is never going to feel convenient. is going to feel like it goes against every single cell of you, because you're building a different momentum, as Trent's just framed it, and it's going to take time for that momentum to become the dominant momentum. And actually there will still be days where you don't want to get out of bed at 4 a.m. and go for the run. There's still going to be days that I don't want to show up for my team. You know, there's still days that I feel overwhelmed, that I'm having my coffee in the morning and thinking, how the fuck am I going to get through the day? But you just put one foot in front of the other, and as long as you can love yourself, you know, as you were just sharing before, like, you know, you don't have to be breaking world records every day, but put the position of what that world record for you might be that day. And if you're in the darkest of dark places, if you're in the midst of, you know, depression, or you're relating to some of what Trent has shared in your own life, because, you know, there will be listeners that are there, that are in that place. I want you to know that we're speaking to you. Your marathon today might be getting out of bed and cleaning the house. Your marathon might be, you know, to make a phone call and say, I'm sorry to someone. That might be, you know, the biggest mountain in the universe to you right now. And there's not going to be a better time than actually doing it and starting to build a new momentum in your life.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's, if you can expand on that a little bit more, tomorrow has already made its mind up. Tomorrow's already made its mind up, right? And you're going to be presented with the same two options: grow or stay the same. And the beauty, like I said, why you still can breathe air into your lungs, is you get those same two options at any moment in life. You have the choice, you know. Yesterday's gone. It's not coming back to look for you. All the opportunities that you had yesterday to do, they're fucking gone. But the good news is you have right now, you know. And I think that we forget about that because we're always stuck in the past or stuck in this future. There's just a bunch of these present moments that haven't occurred yet. And rather than thinking right now, you know, I have the same two options that I'm always presented with right now. Yeah, and which one do I want to choose?
I see it like a kaleidoscope, you know. It's like all the pieces are the same, even though the picture can change and does change. 100%. And if we want to try and go back and get the same picture that we were just looking at 2 seconds ago before we twisted the kaleidoscope, we're going to literally torture ourselves instead of just falling in love with the beauty that is to be. But this point of, you know, negative spiraling, what do you feel creates truly creates that momentum for people to a point where someone finds themselves, at just feeling like they truly cannot escape, where they've found themselves. What creates that? Why do some people find themselves there and others don't, in your opinion?
In my opinion, the negative spiraling aspect that you talk about comes down to a big portion of us giving a fuck what other people think of us and us having to leave. Perfect example, when I was asked, what title I like to go by, and I believe that humans, we're taught that we have to go by a title. We've got to be known as something. A name's not enough. I'm Trent. I'm the ultra marathon runner. I'm this, and I'm feeling like I always have to label myself, right? And I believe we put these labels on ourselves, either consciously or unconsciously. Like we live up to these things. We wear a certain thing or we dress a certain way. So we're portraying this image that we think to the world. And I believe that if we feel as though we're not portraying this image that we created, that we're not worthy and we're not good enough. And I think that the self-hate starts to creep in because we're not living up to this expectation that we think the world has of us and not realizing that it's the own expectation that we've created to the world, right? So I think that comes from pigeonholing yourselves and labeling yourselves as, I'm sure you don't say, I'm a podcaster, I'm this, I'm that. No, because you realize that you're Nicole. And Nicole can do whatever the fuck she wants and she can change it whatever time she wants as long as it makes Nicole happy. And that's all that matters. And I think that putting labels and actually caring too much what other people think helps the negative spiraling aspect to a point where we start to hate ourselves from something that we just imagined in the first place.
I like this point. And I think what's really important, for you guys to consider in your own life is what are those drivers? Like you just said, I'll change at any point because I just want to do whatever the fuck makes me happy. There's definitely a component of that, but I know like my ability to be flexible with my direction and creative with my direction actually has the work that's had to happen underneath that is a deep understanding of my values and a deep understanding of what, what I want to give to the world. And of course, throughout time for all of us, that's going to change form. But there is some, system that allows me to have that direction in life that I think everyone should take the time to really discover in themselves. Like, what are your, one of my therapists when I was much younger said in relationships, come up with what your non-negotiables are. What are your absolute non-negotiables, because they need to become your boundaries. And I took that a step further and really asked myself, what are my non-negotiables in life? Service to others is a non-negotiable for me. I need to be working towards something that is making the world a better place. And there's many others. But I think being clear on that allows me to have a confidence and a conviction that is so valuable. And I'm curious, Trent, like through your journey, did that start to illuminate for you what those non-negotiables were and how they relate to your value system?
Yeah, 100%. And that's a great way to put it. I've always heard about the non-negotiables relationship and that, but never really heard it put in the aspect of non-negotiables in your own day-to-day life. And you're right. I guess, the accountability thing I talk for me is my non-negotiables. So my non-negotiables, I guess, would be allowing myself a point in time in the day and being flexible enough to realize that may not happen when I want it to happen, but knowing that there is a point in those 24 hours that it can happen, right? So I'm non-negotiable on whenever my time slot is. So you get given a schedule, right, which is life. This is life. This is what we're given. And it's up to you to create your own personal schedule around life schedule, right? And I think the non-negotiable aspect is refusing to have the excuse that I don't have enough time to work on myself, and making sure that no matter how small or big that I get, I take an opportunity to do something positive for myself. And that could be anything from reading a book to physical workout to anything that's going to self-help me, because I believe that we can never truly give on to others, i.e. for me, my family, if we don't first have an overfilling cup for ourselves. I can't give my daughters 100% of me if I can't give myself 1%. I need to be able to give myself everything that I can in order to be able to push that on to everyone around me. So
yeah, amen.
Yeah. And I think what I was saying about, doing whatever the hell makes you happy, you put it very eloquently and a lot better than I did, meaning that you are comfortable enough to know the flexibility is created, that you can still have the same objective, which is help other people, but you can do it with all other facets. You don't just have to stay on one thing. You can change and adapt and do everything to still get the same outcome.
I think this comes from, back to what we were mentioning before about, why do people struggle so much to find that place where they just begin to make change in their life. And I think that this mindset that so many people find difficult to break, which is you're either this or you're that. You're either doing whatever the fuck makes you happy and caring about no one else, or you're only pleasing others and completely abandoning yourself. You're either good or you're bad. You're either a loving person or you're a hateful person. I think these wild kind of generalizations, they lack so much nuance and true understanding of the human experience that it creates a lot of difficulty and challenge and sometimes harm for people, because we've been taught, in our like Disney fairy tales, there's a bad guy and there's a good guy. And if you do something bad, then you can't be a good guy because the good guy never does something bad. And that very binary way of thinking, I think when it comes to our own journey and our process, to put that expectation, it's like, we're not a musician unless we're Beyonce. We're not an artist unless we're Picasso. Like we're not a speaker unless we're Tony Robbins. And when we set ourselves up with that frame, you're just literally setting yourself up to never be allowed to be a beginner. Like a good person does bad things. 100%. A loving person judges. And I think the more we can relate to ourselves with that compassion and understand, I'm so far from perfect, but I'm going to strive to be better and to own what I need to own in my journey in my life. That's where we can truly grow, not when we're being pinned against this ideal of very black and white perfection. And I want everyone to understand that, because when you begin this journey, you're going to be bad at it. That's just the reality.
It's the whole point. And I think, sorry to jump in, I just wanted to touch on something really interesting that you said there. It's like you said, we feel like we're not a musician unless we're a Beyonce, we're not an artist unless we're Picasso. And I think this comes down to another aspect that I've really felt in my journey is try to start the habit of not comparing yourself to anyone else in this world but you and where you were yesterday, right? So we always feel as though we've got to live up to this person if we're choosing this path, because they're, in our eyes, at the pinnacle of what we want to be in this chosen field. We don't know if they actually feel that about themselves at all. They might feel just as inadequate as we do right now about someone else. So I started to learn that, and I started to realize that if I started to measure my success off what other people have achieved, I'm never going to be good enough. How could I be? There's always going to be someone better if I'm only focusing on it. But when I broke it down and said, okay, let's just compare me to me. Let's compare me to how I was yesterday, and I only truly went on that path. And it's got, some people don't understand that. Some people don't understand why I can go in races or something that I do, and I don't actually care what I'm coming or anything. I care about the journey. I care about the process. I care about adding to my personal story, because I know it's going to make me a better person later on. I think that's really powerful to try and convey to everyone, because I think we do try and like you said, if I want to be a speaker, I want to do this, I start comparing myself to, Tony Robbins or Les Brown or people like this. Just do you, and just try and be a better you. If you don't know how to play the guitar, there's probably a good reason for it. You probably haven't spent as much time as you should, Do it every single day for a certain amount of time for the next 5 years. I bet you'd be pretty bloody good at it,
Yeah, this is so good, and I think that there's another sort of lesson there that's super important to understand, which is meet the beginning moments, as in the same way that you would meet the moments when your absolute vision of success. Meet the beginning moments with the same reverence, the same respect. And I often share when people ask me, like, how did you end up speaking on the stages that I've spoken on? What's so interesting about those experiences, whether I was speaking at like TED in Oxford or, Mind Valley, the feeling I had when I was about to give those talks was exactly the same feeling I had when I ran a workshop with 4 people in a remote community. Like the way that I met that opportunity was the same. And to me, that's always been the trick. Like, I bought my first home when I was 21 or 22, and it was like, an average little apartment, but I was so obsessed with making sure that it was so clean and so well looked after. And I treated it as though it was a mansion. I treated it as though I already had my dream home. And sure enough, over the years, I started to actualize, through that, the respect and the reverence of meeting what I had with gratitude and treating it as though it was worthy of that respect. I attracted more into my life. And I think that's such a valuable lesson, that those moments when you first go to gym or you first start to make change, when you're really bad at it, treat that as though you've already made it.
100%, definitely. And it always comes with putting yourself out of your comfort zone, like we said before, trying new things that you've always wanted to try, and just be open to be shit at it. There was once a point in your life where you didn't know how to walk, it's cool. That's where the best stories start. You need to start from the bottom to get anywhere of success in everything that you do. And we want to be good at everything first go, because we don't want to feel humiliated. We don't want all this, but we need to understand that you need to fail. You need to feel humiliated in order to be able to learn and to be able to grow and to be able to appreciate when you get to a point how far you've come, and never detach yourself from that. And I think that's where the humility comes in, to be able to always being connected to that starting point as well, and bringing yourself back down, because we're creatures of habit. And then another little thing that I haven't touched on yet that loves to creep in all the time is the fucking ego. And that's another thing that you're going to be very careful and very wary of as well. That likes to creep in, and that likes to take us away from things, and that's really hard to be aware of, when it happens. But I think that the starting points, and always being able to refer back to the starting points, helps keep the humility and helps keep you grounded, and it helps keep the ego at bay as much as you possibly can.
Amen. Do you remember, Trent, when you started going to the gym and changing your life? Do you have any recollection of the first kind of moments that you looked in the mirror and felt something different about yourself?
When it started to change?
Yeah.
When it started to change? Yeah, I do. I remember, like, for me, it was I started to run. I've done a sport called Muay Thai for a long period of my life, and I'd done that. So I'm like, I want to come back. I want to have a fight, start to work out. And I remember just from the first run that I did, 101 kilos, 2-point-something Ks, heaving, wheezing, spluttering, feeling absolutely sorry for myself, right? And then I knew that I was like, okay, if I keep doing this every day, it has to get better. Slowly. Don't remember exactly the point, but I just remember dieting as well, everything at once, and then you get that 1 kilo that you lost. If that was part of my goal, I wanted to get down, I lost 25 kilos, so getting that, it wasn't working, bang, I got it. Wasn't working, I got it. There's one, there's two. And then we get that compounding interest, and you start to get addicted to that because it starts to work. And I think just a lot of times in the past when I tried to change, because I tried to get off drugs and alcohol and diet and do all this shit, and Monday I'm going to do this, and
January 1st, that's going to change my life.
It's like, we give us these drastic things like, okay, I'm going to stop drinking, smoking, doing drugs. I'm going to eat perfect, run 500 kilometers a day, all these ridiculous things. And of course we're going to fail. So I think it's just keeping at it long enough until you see an outcome, because I think we give up too soon. So when I first started to see something like was working that I was doing, that's when the magic started to happen. That's when I'm like, oh, okay, if I stay on this and I keep doing this,
I'm so passionate about this, and I hope that people really hear what you're sharing, because it's the thing, you know, as soon as you get the wisdom that Trent's sharing, nothing is impossible anymore, because the impossibility is the looking at the end result and thinking, how the fuck am I going to get there? But when you keep your focus on the next thing that needs to be achieved, this is when I started to really know that my dreams, my very, 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 very big dreams, are really achievable, because it's the same process, whether you're trying to make $10 or you're trying to, you know, impact 1 billion people. That the process of application, what is the next thing I need to do? Applying yourself to that, achieving that thing, and developing that momentum in the right direction. It's not that it's not going to challenge you, but the second I stopped assuming that it should be easy and that it should just happen, and I actually started to be real with myself, just like you said when you went for your first run, like, if I just do this, if this is hard, this sucks, but if I do this every day, it's going to get easier. That mindset is the golden mindset, not setting yourself up to being unrealistic, but being real with yourself. Okay, I'm going to start this company. I'm going to lose 10 kilos. I'm going to run a marathon. It's going to suck sometimes. You know, these are the hurdles that I need to actually be willing. And so the real question is, how willing are you? You know, is the why, is the reason you want to achieve that thing greater than the obstacles and the challenges and the internal struggles that you face? And I think when you get that tension right, at least for me, when I got that tension right in my life, that my why was more powerful than the why not, everything started to change.
Definitely. Couldn't agree more. And I think the big thing that would have changed in that was the mindset, the way that you started applying your mind to the same situations that you're facing. You're just coming at it with a different mindset, you know? And I think that that's something that it seems so easy now, but it's so hard to see when you're in the throes of trying to figure out exactly what you want. You know, it's got to present enough value. You've got to understand as well that, you know, and it sucks, but sometimes you're not at the position that you think that you want to be, because I related to the words versus actions. I said, and I meant it, I didn't want to lose my partner at the time. I didn't want to do drugs. I didn't want to do alcohol. I didn't want to do all these things, right? But I was doing them. So the actions actually showed me that's exactly what I want to be doing. So you need to realize that it's okay to want, but it must have enough value to you to in order to change. And you talk about a big portion of why. And I guess my why, and I was lucky enough that we had a little 1-year-old daughter at the time. We still do, Alexandra. And I had a very powerful moment to realize that the reason why a lot of the world is so fucked up is because of what all the other generations had taught us, or the families had shown them. You know what I mean? Like, Dad was an alcoholic, I was an alcoholic, you know. Not all the time this happens, but it happens a lot of the time, because we don't realize how much of an influence that we have on the next generation. You know, I'm a parent, and I thought, I've got so much power here right now to show my daughter and show my whole family what a good life looks like, you know, in order to hopefully follow in my footsteps. Not do what I'm doing, but follow in my footsteps in creating the person that they always knew they should be, you know, and the ripple effect of that. So I think finding your why will get you up, because motivation is cool, and you might get motivated off this, right? And that's cool. But you know what else was cool was when I used to watch like a Batman movie and walk out and think that I was Batman for 5 minutes, until I realized that that was just the movie that I was watching, you know? So what I'm saying is, external fuel is great, and this is external fuel: motivation, listening to podcasts, listening to talks and stuff like that. But you must find your why, because the why is the internal fuel source that will always burn when all this shit's off. When you wake up in the morning and there's nothing on, there's no music, It's that internal flame, that's what'll get you through. You know what I mean? So I think it's finding in yourself what the why is, and people probably can't relate. The why is what will make you do that thing that you've always wanted to do. What will make you get up out of bed and go towards that goal that you've always wanted to achieve?
If you can't find your why, another question that's really like been powerful in my journey is, what is the cost of me not doing this?
Perfect. Yeah, 100%. Exactly. Yep. If you can't find your why, ask yourself, what's the cost if I don't do this? And can I accept that? That's great.
Can you live? Can you live with yourself? Long term, because you have to live with yourself.
That's exactly
there have been situations all of us have found ourselves in, and we've lost people that we've loved, and we've acted in ways that we're not proud of. All of us, it doesn't. I don't care who you are. We've all been there.
No one's immune to it.
Yeah, no one's immune to it, because this is a school. Earth is a school. We're here to learn. Actually, I was having dinner with a friend yesterday here in Helsinki, and he said, you're going to get to a point, all of us are going to get to a point in our lives where we have to look back and ask, did I make 10,000 friends? Did I make 10,000 enemies? Did I make 5,000 friends, 5,000 enemies? And all of that ultimately are the choices that we make, how we choose to conduct ourselves. And then what we reflected on is ultimately, it's not about those 10,000 friends or those 10,000 enemies. It's you living with the choices you made. It's you against yourself, feeling, did I conduct myself in a way that truly was real and honest and loving, and that I can be proud of. And to me, that's the ultimate cost. But by not prioritizing, what you're saying. And this I think this is a nice segue to ask the question: when you ran your first 100-mile marathon, what were the moments where you really found yourself at the wall? And talk us through that.
Yeah, I love this because it's a great segue to talk about, I guess, one of the most important things, and it's the mind's perceived ceiling or its perceived limitations. And I say the word perceived because, I'm not really I do these ultra marathons, I do these long distance things, not because I like the sport, but I like the journey and I like what it does to the mind. And I think it correlates so much to the real world, meaning that going for my first 100-mile event took me 26 hours and 59 minutes, right? Non-stop. And the ups and downs that I went on that, the sheer ecstasy highs and the absolutely grinding lows were exactly the same things that I might go through in 5-10 years in the real world, right? So my first 100-mile run was when I truly thought that I was at my 100% limit. I couldn't go any further. That was it. I'm done. I'm broken. I'm hurting. It's 2 a.m. I don't want to be here, right? And knowing that this is where my mind gives up. This is where everything gives up, right? I've never been further than this point in my life to get to right here. And knowing that there can be, what if there is something on the other side of this? And in all that turmoil and when things were going downhill, I could find those little sparks to keep going. I realized that there was and I'll speak metaphorically here, there was all these little doors in my head that all the dust started to rattle off, and I saw all these little doors, and I didn't know that they existed before.
New territory.
And those doors were untapped potential.
Can I just correlate this to once upon a time when the people believed the earth was flat, and the first ever adventurer said, I'm just going to go and fall off the edge, and realize that there is, in fact, a world, a universe beyond, the edge. I always think about that we have this perceived, this is it. But that is the very moment this whole new world opens up to us, when we go to that edge.
100%. And this is where I realized at that point that how short I was selling myself, before this moment, I'm not going to dwell on that, but I'm like, man, if that was this is what I think my 100% is. And now I see all these avenues that I can take. And I guess that was to go back to the race at about 2 a.m. I was broken. I'd ran about 110 kilometers, or ran, walked, crawled, whatever you want to call it. And with only the sheer power of my mind and realizing that the only thing stopping me from going any further was my mind, it took me 15 hours to do the last 60 kilometers, right? I come in like nearly dead last, and the value that I got out of that, I could never recreate. It's priceless, the ups, the downs. And once I got through it, I was a different person. I started to realize that there is no limit, and every time that I put this ceiling on myself, I'm putting it on myself. You're not putting it on me. I'm putting it on myself. So I'm only ever going to be allowed to get to this point. And once I finished that, I realized that I needed to stop going with what can I do? Like what I can't do, and just seeing what if I can do, what else can I do? And I guess that's kind of got me really addicted to realizing that there is no end to it, right? And once you cross what your perceived finish line is, that's where it can always become unraveled, because you feel as though you've arrived. And I ran 100 miles now. I've arrived here. Now I've done this, and realize that no matter what it is, there always has to be a bar, and there can be no finish line, right? And that's the only way to seek your true potential, is when you implore the no finish line mentality and realize that there's always room to get a little bit better. That was like my lowest point in my life, and probably another massive turning point in my life as well, going through that.
Thank you for sharing that. I just think that there's so much gold in what you're sharing, that I hope everyone takes on board. And it's the simultaneous awareness that it's limitless, and right now you feel like you have an edge, and the awareness that when you jump off that edge, there's going to be more and more and more and more. And I think knowing that is where you find both this balance of not having "I'll be happy when" syndrome, being content where you are in your journey, in the understanding that you can both be directive and aspirational in your life without sacrificing all of your happiness right now to a perceived kind of future goal.
Definitely.
Having both of those things is really important, because a lot of people who are driven and aspirational, which actually another guest and I spoke about, which I thought was super valuable as a message as well. Like, don't glorify the outcome so much that you lose sight of what it's actually about, which is who you're becoming in the process.
100%. It's always good. Like my trainer used to say when I used to fight, you got to enjoy the journey. You got to enjoy the process. You can't just love the destination, because you're building all the character when you get there. And if you miss, you're treating it like this rehearsal to a show, and then when you get there, you've lost what it's all about, because you didn't realize that all the nuggets of gold, all the magic's made in this process to get to that end goal, So
yeah. Trent, this has been so great. I'd love to just open space if you want to do like a bit of a recap of where these guys can actually begin moving this. I'm sure what they are feeling is external motivation, and actually take some initial steps to create that intrinsic fire inside of them after hearing this.
I guess I would say, if you're at a point in your life where you want something else, or yearning for something else, what is that? It might be in here, but put it on here, put it on some paper, write it down, because you might want to, and this, I'm talking about me working out stuff like that. You might want to be an author, you might want to be a great podcast, you might want to do all these things. Whatever it is you want to do, write it down, because that could be the destination, but it's got to look like something. So I just want to be a good author. Okay, what does that look like? I must do this. Sit down, write it down, and be open that it can change, directions at any time, but you just must be striving towards something. And also just check in with people a lot. surround yourselves with like-minded people. Unfortunately, if you're surrounding yourselves with 9 losers, you're going to be the 10th loser at some stage. I hate to say it. So try and find people that are aligned with what you're trying to do. Try and find people that are doing the same avenues, right? Not comparing yourself to them, but surround yourself with that, because getting in a community of like-minded people helps you all to grow and should help you all grow and should help you all push yourself. So start doing that, and just always realize that we're only here for a certain amount of time, and we never know how long that time is. And don't waste any fucking moment not striving towards being the most, best version of yourself that you can be. And it's okay to fail, and it's okay to set fire to the barn, I like to call it, right? But instead of doing what I used to do and tip fire on the fucking thing and let it burn to the ground and then worry about building a new one the next day, just put it out. Meaning you might step off the track. It's okay. Step back on. You might step off for a long period of time. It's okay. You can always step back on, and just realize that it's never over until you give up on yourself. Until then, doesn't matter. It's not done. So it's not finished.
It's not finished, exactly. What a perfect ending.
That's kind of what I'd say.
Trent, thank you. How can these guys stay in touch, or if they have questions that come up after, how can they let you know their reflections?
I have Instagram's the only social media that I have, and the handle on it is T decimal bones BONES _ and mate, hit me up on that and ask me anything. I don't have, like I always say to everyone, like I don't have all the answers, and I might not say what you want me to say, but I'll probably say what you need me to say, And yeah, hit me up. I love to have a chat. I love this, I love to, because we're all the same. We're all just people trying to do our thing in our own way, and I love that we all have the ability to help each other. So yeah. Thank you, Nicole, for having me on, mate. Like, I really appreciate it. It's the first time I met you tonight. You're a legend, and I really, really appreciate you having me on, mate. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your time. So great. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
I also wanted to send my love, to you regarding Cliff. It just
I'll just say one little. The man stays on my table looking at me when I'm on that thing here, and there's a picture of me here, and like, yeah, you get it, you met him, and like, if I didn't have that counter with him, I don't think he realizes how much he done for me, man. And it's just insane. And I know I always said to him that I will forever strive to be his biggest comeback story, his biggest success story, and I'm still going to do that, So yeah, it was pretty crazy, man.
Cliff said to me when I was 20, you've got to be so careful, Nick, because wherever you go, people will follow. So make sure you don't walk off the edge of a cliff and take everyone with you. And I had no idea at the time what he meant. and until I started to grow up and realize that my words have influence, and I have to be really careful with what I do with that. And
100%.
Yeah, he was a really good family friend of my ex-partner. So
yeah, right. Yeah, I think I spoke at he didn't have a funeral. I spoke at had a gathering and stuff for him as well, and just wanted to realize that in these things, because I saw him for the very thing that ended up he succumbed to his own darkness, because he's giving to everyone else. He's obviously forgot to give to himself, and going to see him for the exact reason why he ended up just succumbing to can really confuse a lot of people as well. And I wanted to reiterate with it. It's about what you do with it, And for me, his passing really hit home. what you're doing and the time that you have is so precious. Like, it did the opposite for me. It just reiterated to me that what I'm doing and what I must do is continue forward, and you can never understand what people are going through, and you can never try and make sense of it, because it doesn't make sense, and it won't make sense, and that's okay. All I can do is just be so grateful, man, because like I ended up getting Kathleen back, and we have a fucking 6-month-old new baby that would not exist if I didn't meet him, and he doesn't understand that all of that was created from our encounter, So, yeah, man, pretty special.
Yeah, I feel you. If you ever need, I really do understand Cliff's spirit, an ear, I'm here.
Yeah, I appreciate it, mate. And look, mate, it was so like that. I've done a couple of podcasts before, and it was so different to anything else, because I love that, it wasn't about, sometimes it's about like the events you've done or the places you've got in events and stuff like that. And you understood that all of this is just about the journey, the human journey. And whether you are a sportsman or an author or this, it still has the same message in there of it, So I really enjoyed it. Appreciate it, man.
I'm really happy to hear that. Thank you. Yeah. Kathleen has my WhatsApp or whatever, so feel free to reach
100%.
out.
Yeah, and I'll try and find you on. I'm sure Kat has you on everything as well. So love to stay in touch with you, mate, for sure.
Awesome. Big love.
Sure he does. Thanks, mate. Have a good night.
Bye.
See you later.
Hey family, if you loved this podcast and you want to stay connected to a tribe of heroes all around the world that are here to make the world a better place and act from their hero brain and act from a place of love, bringing their head and heart into cohesion, then I just want to invite you to jump in our Facebook group for free. Just search the Critical Mass Crew and you're going to find us there. We have tribe calls weekly, and these podcasts actually streamed into that group. So we have an additional 20-minute Q&A with the guests every single week that is exclusive to people in the group. So you'll also find the link in the show notes. See you in there.